I don't know if you know, but the manuscript was rejected over 70 times.
70?
70.
I didn't know that.
Yes. 70.
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. Today's guest is Lola Akinmade Åkerström, the author of the novel In Every Mirror, She's Black. On this episode, Lola explains how this story came to her after she found herself unable to connect with stories she'd been writing since she was a child.
I used to write fiction when I was younger, so I tried rewriting some of those stories as an adult, but I was struggling to rewrite those stories. And I was like, why? And I just realized those characters were just characters that I couldn't connect with. And I knew that the story I was meant to write was a lot closer to me and my experiences.
In putting her experiences to paper, Lola drew on her background as a photographer, travel writer, and former tech head. She unpacks why it was so important for her to show that Black women are not a monolith. How holding empathy for others can help us embrace difference. And what she learned through rejection about her own grit and gumption. Lola shares those stories next, when Black and Published continues.
When did you know that you were a writer?
I've always loved writing, but I think it actually started when I was 12 or 13, that I knew I was always going to be a writer in some form, because I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and I went to boarding school, and I used to write a lot of short fiction stories. And I used to have a sign-out sheet. So I was running my own little library in my boarding room where my friends were checking in and out the notebooks I filled up with stories. I knew then that, I would always be a writer in some form. I just didn't know I was going to kind of manifest itself in the future.
Okay. So I always hear African children always say that there are only 3 careers that are acceptable: doctor, lawyer, engineer. So
exactly.
How did writing and deciding to pursue that as a child, and you're checking out stories from your boarding school room, how did that go over with your family? They said, yeah, I'm going to be a writer.
Exactly. I did not start out as a writer because I am African. So when I moved to the US at 15, I actually went to school for information systems and geography. So writing was not an option for me. Like, my background was in tech, and it wasn't until 2009 that I fully kind of jumped into the more creative, 100% writer, photographer, storyteller.
Yeah, I saw in your bio that you are a photographer for National Geographic. So I'm like, how did you make the jump from tech systems analyst, Geographic Tech, into I'm going to take pictures for National Geographic?
Right? Well, I've always been a creative person, and I call myself a visual storyteller, right? So even before I got into photography, I used to be an oil painter. So that was kind of how I got into photography. I traveled, I took pictures so I could come back and paint them. That was actually how I got into it. And then slowly I moved away from the painting to kind of explore photography more.
And you have 2 travel books before the novel, correct?
The first one, which is Due Not, is kind of a collection of stories spanning over 20 years of travel. So I'm dating myself now, sharing those because it's really important to see what it's like to travel through the eyes of an African, as a Black travel writer as well. We need those stories. We need to diversify the storyteller. So that's that first book. And then the second book is called Lågom, The Swedish Secret of Living Well.
Is doing Lågom, I hope I said that right, was that when you got the first impetus for these characters, and every mirror she's Black, because you mentioned all of your travels, and then in the novel, one of your characters has done a lot of traveling, and has all of that backstory.
I mean, the Logan book shows that I do have deep knowledge about the culture. I've been here many years. I speak the language. I'm married into the culture. So showing that and understanding and digging deeper and looking at things that people take for granted. Sometimes it takes an outside view to see something sometimes deeper. So I needed to write that book so that it also strengthened me writing In Every Mirror She's Black, because I know kind of what I'm talking about, culturally, lifestyle, different situations. But the idea for In Every Mirror She's Black actually didn't come from writing the first book. It was actually, I told you, I used to write fiction when I was younger. So I tried rewriting some of those stories as an adult, but I was struggling to rewrite those stories. And I was like, why? And I just realized those characters were just characters that I couldn't connect with. As a child, you have a kind of a wider fantasy. So you just create people and characters that at that age are plausible. But as an adult, I just couldn't create. And I knew that the story I was meant to write was a lot closer to me and my experiences. And so that was the minute I got that idea, then I was like, that's it. I've traveled the world. I know a lot about different cultures. I know a lot about Swedish culture. I am a Black woman in Sweden, so I have lots of experiences. And I know a lot of Black women across the range, from refugees to those, more privileged. Why don't you write a book that actually reflects the diversity of the Black experience in Europe and in Sweden? And so that's what I did. And I knew that I wanted to tackle class, career, and culture. So that was why I needed the three women.
Ooh, I want to go back first, but I love that you said, tackling class, career, and culture. But so you actually tried to go back to the stories you had written as a child, and you still had those notebooks, and then rewrite them as an adult?
Yes, because I had a lot of great, and I went back to see, I didn't have a lot of those notebooks, but I had a lot of the synopsis of each of those stories over the years. And then just try to say, oh, why can't I take this and write it, make it something. So if I want to do that in the future, I have a well of ideas I could always go back to. So that's great.
No, I've never heard a writer say that before, that they've gone back to their old stuff that they had as a child to try and tackle it from an adult. I think that, what did that teach you about writing and the craft, and where your mind was as a child and where it is now? And I guess development and story arc, that amazes me.
No, absolutely. And I think for me, earlier on, I knew I had a good sense of self, right? I had an idea of what my voice, even though it wasn't as developed then, I had a good sense of what my voice was. And I think having that unique voice for me has been what has also helped me stay consistent in all the things I've done, because the voice is pretty much the same wherever I go. So yes, I was back then seen as a very weird child, and I was sidelined a lot. But
it's all paid off.
It's all paid off. But also, it's if I went back to my younger self, I would tell my younger self, just keep sticking to your own voice, even if the world wants to change it.
So then, and having such a strong voice as a child, and then developing it as you've gotten older, and then really dove into writing with Due North and Lagom, how did you then parlay that into the three very distinct characters that you have in Every Mirror She's Black?
Yes, absolutely. So all the women are me, but they're also not me, right? So I wanted to show, first of all, the diversity of the Black experience, but I also wanted to show these women as individuals and give them space to make mistakes. Because as a Black woman, over the years, I haven't been given enough space to make any mistakes myself, right? And if we make a mistake, then we are carrying the entire culture on our shoulders. And we don't have that privilege. Society doesn't want to give it to us. So I wanted in this book to give the women the privilege to be able to to make mistakes and to really, humanize them so deeply. A lot of these women, we don't have the same values, right? But at the same time, it's them. And it also makes us reflect on how we are judging them based on our own values, which is also the point of the book, to give people that Black women are not monoliths. They need to be able to feel what they feel, have their own values, and be treated as individuals.
So then was it your intention in showing that Black women aren't monoliths to also make them all immigrants? Because Brittany is Jamaican, Kami is African, and Muna is Kami is Nigerian and Muna is Somali.
Correct. Well, I mean, Brittany is American. She was born in the US,
Mm-hmm.
So Kami is naturalized American, and then Muna is Somali refugee. And I needed to show the three different kinds. And there's many profiles, but just wanted to show three profiles where one is an American,
Mm-hmm.
Black American, one is kind of naturalized, so moved from somewhere else, but naturalized, and then the other had to run, flee from her home. So I needed to create very different women, but also not have any of them carry the weight of their cultures on their shoulders. So that if Muna makes a mistake, it doesn't reflect on the entire community, or if Brittany makes a mistake, it doesn't reflect on an entire community.
So then with that said, what was your publishing journey like with this about, getting an agent to represent it and shopping it to publishing houses? Like, how did that go for you with such a unique book?
Yes. I don't know if you know, but the manuscript was rejected over 70 times.
70?
70.
I didn't know that.
Yes. 70, this manuscript. Even a friend of mine said she did not know there were that many publishing houses and imprints. She was just joking about it. Because you read the book, right? Many of the publishers, first of all, they said, and they rejected it with high praise, right? With high praise, they rejected. They said, well, a lot of the literary imprint said, well, it's a bit too commercial for us, so we can't publish it. The commercial said, well, it's a little too literary for us, we can't publish it. Well, it centers 3 Black women, and we're not sure if the audiences will connect, with these women, centering them on a mainstream kind of level, in a country that's just...
I hate that excuse so much. I'm sorry.
I know, right? I know.
It physically makes me angry.
Yeah.
Okay,
so you can imagine, I was in this process 70. It was rough. And my agent, she's one of the best in the business. She was stumped, and then she fully saw just the gatekeeping, just how thick that gatekeeping layer was, until Sourcebooks kind of heard my voice. And the way Sourcebooks came about was the initial place we pitched it to Sourcebooks. The editor, Krista, loved it so much, but couldn't publish it at her own imprint. So she took it to another colleague to go champion this book, to say, please read this book. Read this book. If you love it, let's do it together. So both of them actually bought together, because she really championed. She went to Erin, who is my other editor. So once we went through the editorial process, then, and it just great, God works in mysterious ways, right?
Amen.
Because once the book got out in terms of the early reads, then we just started getting these amazing authors to read it and blurb it. Taylor Jenkins Reid, Imbolombe, Nicole, Dennis Byrne, just many of them just come in. And so it was like, why the gatekeepers? And I always say, that the gatekeepers are not giving their audiences credit as well, because now they are saying we need to spoon feed you because you cannot handle some kinds of stories, So you as the audience should be offended, actually, they're insulting your intelligence. So that was kind of the journey. So now, fast forward, we have 4 different publishers, just signed a German deal. We've got film TV interest, and I'm just grateful. And this is just the beginning of the journey for this book, so, but yeah.
Don't be humble about that. So you got to say, don't be humble about that. You have 4 publishers. You just signed a German deal, and there is film and TV interest after it was rejected 70 times.
70.
That Oh my gosh. I'm glad that you shared that story, because in receiving all that rejection, you were still persistent. But how
Yes.
did that make you rethink your story or revise your story or just continue pushing forward with what you
I
had?
kept pushing it. I kept pushing it because it was a story that needed to be told.
Mm.
Because I'm a Black woman in Sweden, right? I'm living this almost every day. These are people I also kind of lots of different women of color, Black women. They have different experiences, and our voices are valid as well. And when I started getting those rejections, I started realizing, they're trying to silence the stories. They're trying to make our stories invincible. And all that thought got validated when a Swedish publisher reached out. They were interested, but they said, well, they want me to cut out scenes from Muna's section and tone down Muna's section. And that was when I was like, nah, no. So in essence, erase somebody that's already invincible. Just erase their story because their life makes you uncomfortable. I can't do that. So I had to, so I kept driving. And then also just having grit, because that process of rejection already toughened me. But I imagine if I got after the 40th rejection, and then I think about other amazing writers, amazing talented authors who maybe after their 30th rejection just quit and say, you know what, maybe this is not for me. Then imagine all the voices, all the stories we missed out on, right? Right.
And I think that's so profound to say, because you talk about the gatekeeping that's already there for the authors whose books do come out, all the gatekeeping they faced. And then all the books that die on the chopping block, either because the author starts to doubt themselves because of the rejection that comes in, or it just never sells. So you already have such a small group of books to pick from when it comes to a diverse group of authors with unique voices. And that's not even really what could come, because so many don't even make it that far.
Exactly. And then think about it. All the books that have been sweeping the awards or been shortlisted and longlisted, many of them are writers of color, Black writers. And then people are like, wow, what's going on? Is there a revolution of Black writers? No, you should be pissed at the industry for keeping out the voices out of the industry for so long, right? These amazing authors that imagine how many over the years that the industry has kept out. Because, letting them in, they'll sweep all the awards. So.
It was a New York Times article last year that discussed that, like, there's still a diverse books problem, even though when you see the awards and the lists come out, they're full of diversity. Like, don't let the number of Black and brown faces who are sweeping the awards year after year after year after year fool you, because
exactly,
yes, they're winning, but it's not enough of them. It still needs to be so many more. So, like, I think about Robert Jones Jr., who's shortlisted now for the National Book Award. I interviewed him for season 1, and it's just like, how long and how much struggle he had to go through to get to his debut novel for it to get to this point, and the success that it's having now. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And they're not just that, just diversifying the diverse stories themselves, right? So it doesn't have to be kind of a template diverse story, a story that a Black author writes. And that was also what contributed to the rejections, because I am an African writer in the diaspora. They're expecting me to write a certain way already. And with this book, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I started writing it a certain way, and then I switched. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write what I want to write, the way I want to write it, so that when I'm done, people remember the women, not my exquisite prose. They remember the lives of the women. That's what I want you to take away from the book. And
did they want you to write like Americana, like another Americana? like,
like, I'm Nigerian, I'm African, I'm in the diaspora. You need to write super flowery, otherwise we're not going to take you seriously. And I'm like, screw that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write what I want to write in a way that, is approachable, is well written, is it's direct and unflinching, but it's real. It is real, and so that also opens up the space so that people can feel like, what, I want to write more, blended fiction, I want to write something else that doesn't feel like this is what I need to write as a Black writer or as an African writer to be taken seriously. Okay.
And I did see in the notes that you don't want to talk about your personal life, but I do have to ask, how did you get to come to live in Sweden? That just seems like of all the countries in the world, because you can be a travel writer anyway, anywhere.
Yes. Well, I mean, I am married to a Swede. That's why, but that is also why. And I love that you say that of all the places in the world, why Sweden, right? That's also why I created Yoni as a character, because Black women generally do not move to the Nordics for no reason. So it's something has to bring us, and that was why I had to make the story real and believable. I had to create him as a character because that's what's going to bring at least Kemi and Brittany over.
Okay, let's do a reading before we really dive into the book and talking about some more from there.
All right, Black and Published family, it's time for the reading. And here's a quick note about In Every Mirror, She's Black. The novel explores the experiences of the main characters, Kemi, Brittany, and Muna, 3 very different Black women who live in Sweden, and the stories of how they got there and how they might leave. Here's Lola.
Okay, absolutely. So I will start with Kemi at the office where a boss comes in, Connor, to say, hey, we're going to celebrate you, and then kind of just read a bit of that. All right. Seriously, how do you do it, girl? Connor's Boston Irish accent cut through our concentration like a grating radio frequency. You are one remarkable woman. She didn't look up at him. Whenever Connor launched into full urban speak, Kemi averted her eyes to spare his dignity. She had been reviewing the latest brand layout an advertising agency had sent over. With eyebrows furrowed and forehead resting on her fingers, she scanned the copy, cringing at language that showed a single point of view had been responsible for the global campaign meant to cut across diverse views. She was still mad at Connor for insisting she review it once more, even though she'd been adamant it was a waste of time. He'd simply waved her out of his office, saying if anyone could bake brownies out of shit, it was Kemi. What? Kemi asked, still reading the crap copy. I said, he dragged on, you are one remarkable woman, Kemi. Congratulations. He fully stepped into a corner office with its panoramic glass windows that mentally separated her from cubicle life. It physically didn't, but Kemi needed it too. She wanted him to leave her space. He pressed on. You won National Marketing Executive of the Year. Again, congratulations. A grin spread across his lightly freckled face. He folded his muscular arms across his chest, shirt sleeves rolled up to the elbows. She responded with a deep breath and then, thanks, Connor, tapering off into a smile. Well, thank the awards committee. We can't go public yet with the news because it's embargoed until early May, but we should celebrate early. I'll get Rita to fix a cake and some champagne, he added. Thanks, but really, I don't want to make a fuss about it. It's a huge honor, but he cut her off. Well, we're going to make a fuss about it, about you. So on Friday, Rita will get the cake and champagne, okay? She smiled again deeply. Deeply this time, revealing equally deep dimples. That was when she caught it, again. The naked look in his eyes. That split-second linger that revealed a boss wanted her.
Thank you. So you said that you wanted to tackle class, culture, and career in this novel. And when we first meet Kemi, she's very much at the top of her career, and she's being headhunted for another career. Well, the same career, but in another country. Why was it so important for you to present this image of a Black woman as being so strong and assertive and knowing what she's doing in her career, but who is, by her own admission, failing in her love life.
Correct. It was really super important because one of the kind of messages we get in society as women is, yes, we're strong, we're independent, we don't need anybody, we can do it all on our own, whatever. Which makes women that do want a partner feel like they are somehow selling out because they say, you know what, I'm lonely, I need a man. And so for me, it was really important for me to show that it was okay for Kemi to feel like she needed a partner, right? And not always feel like, I don't need anybody, I can do it all. I'm this kind of strong Black woman, you know, that can go it all. So for me, I wanted to show that vulnerable side. She wanted to be taken care of emotionally. She wanted to have someone to have a partner with, like, you know, to have a partner. So for me, it was super important to show that it was okay for her to want that. And that doesn't make her less of a strong, powerful career woman.
Then was it intentional to create the character Brittany as almost like her exact opposite?
Yes. It was important to create Brittany because Brittany's story is also valid. Brittany is also valid. She's allowed to want what she wants, even if you may not share the same values, right? She's allowed to be who she is. And there is a scene where Kemi is rude to Brittany. And at that moment, people take Brittany's side, even though Kemi was trying to say, like, I work so hard, I struggle, I do all this, and in essence, you are just using your beauty to get along and you get everything for free. In that moment, the reader actually feels for Brittany, even though Kemi was trying to show that I'm the one you should be feeling bad for.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of nuance, there was a lot of thought going into the way I created the characters and their relationships as well. And I also wanted to create those two to show that just because you're Black women, you don't have to be friends, because you may have different values, different experiences, different backgrounds. So I wanted to put that in the book as well, that, again, giving the women space to just be themselves.
And that seemed like a very difficult fact for Muna to understand, that just because these people are around you, or they look like you, or they share a similar experience as you do, especially being as a refugee, that you all aren't automatically going to be friends or sisters.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that and you cut that thread as well, because that was also showing that just because she's Black and they're all the same doesn't mean they want the same thing, or they are looking for the same thing as well. Again, giving all the Black women agency to just be themselves, to want what they want to be, Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's Muna who says on page 147, after she has had a run-in with Kami at the office, she says, who could she fully trust that wouldn't see her as someone to be talked about behind closed doors? And so I thought that was interesting coming from her, because it speaks to both the immigrant experience and the Black experience in another place.
Yes.
And so I guess in channeling some of your own experience in that way, how does it feel when you are both?
Both an immigrant and both a Black woman?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think Godwin, a guy in the book, kind of says it best, right? That in America, at least you're fighting your enemy in daylight, like in the limelight, right? Where in Europe, it's a lot more quiet, right? People will leave you alone, but all the talking is done behind the closed doors, which is almost feels more insidious, right? Because you don't know the atmosphere you're walking into. You feel like, oh, it's welcoming, it's this, but the minute the doors close, busting into native language, and that's it, and of course, these are issues that happen in all parts of the world, but it also happens a lot here. And so I think it was important to show that, because that happens a lot in Sweden. It is a great country, but it's also the most open society run by the most private people, so.
Yeah, you mentioned that a bunch of times with Kimmy and with Brittany, about how everyone around them is speaking Swedish and they don't understand the language, or they're barely understanding the language, only able to pick out a few words here and there, and how isolating that could be.
And it's really important because people always say, yes, well, if you move to a place, learn the language. Of course, you need to learn the language, but it takes time to learn the language. Imagine the strength it takes to move somewhere new, learn from scratch the language, try to understand, try to integrate. And then it's always people like, well, I mean, just learn it and then you understand what we're saying. It's a very dismissive thing of all the effort you're already putting in to learn the language. It's not easy. So I really wanted to do it that way. In Brittany's chapters, I wasn't really translating the Swedish because she did not understand anything until maybe towards the end, because it's all written in the view of the women. So when I translate the Swedish, it's because the person understands. So it's Mona understands it. So I'm translating for the reader because Mona is the one understanding it.
I guess I keep coming back to Muna. Page 217, she says, belonging and acceptance were curious siblings indeed. Muna often thought these feelings made men grovel. One could try to belong for decades without ever fully being accepted. I'm like, this applies to so much more than men.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think it speaks to the entire arc of the book. They're all missing that it could be so much more than what they have.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is also one of my favorite lines from the book, because, and I look at it for people that have moved into new cultures that do everything they can to try and integrate in. And there's a difference between assimilation and integrating, right? You can integrate without fully assimilating and dropping your own background, your own culture, because it's valid. Because in essence, you are saying, I have to kill a part of me just to be accepted by another society. And that doesn't make sense to me anyway. That's something I could never do. So, but there are lots of people that do that because they feel like ultimate acceptance, within this new culture is the goal, because then it will make them feel equal. But no, you'll never ever be equal, and so that was why it was important for me to write kind of those thoughts out in the book.
And I think because there were sexy parts and there were serious parts, and then you touch on serious issues like as with the refugees and the stories that happened there very early on, and even with like the state of mind that the characters are in. And then even though it's not explicitly said in the book, Yanni has a condition as well. Yes. That you pick up on very, very early on. And so I think in touching so many issues, you give a greater sense of what real life is like. Like it's not just yes. one thing, it's many, many, many different things, no matter yes. who you are, where you come from.
Yes, no, absolutely. And that was, they always say, like, if you're a debut novelist, you want to kind of tackle everything at once. But for me, it makes sense. Life is complex. Life is messy. I can't talk about sexism without talking about racism, it's all together, and I wanted to write it in a very organic way. I wanted every single character to be messy and complex. Mm-hmm. And I wanted people to, on one page, like the character, the next page don't like them, the next page like them. Because that's how life is. Some days you like someone, the next day you don't, the next day you do. So, yeah.
And that's very true for the characters. But what I thought was also very well done is that even though you could have like this like-dislike relationship with the characters, there was always the instances of prejudice and racism and discrimination that was always the villain. And writing such a deeply multi-layered novel, what do you want your readers to get from it?
I think that's the beauty of the book, is that you get what you get out of it, right? It's the main message is just that empathy is just my main message, to make you have more empathy for people, each other, because everybody's going through. Now, whatever other message people want to get out of it is up to them. So whether it's not seeing Black women as monoliths, and saying we're all very different, to seeing just how just the effects of exclusion, isolation, denial can really destroy people, to, just how it's one thing to be diverse, is one thing to be inclusive, So there's so many different kind of takeaways people can take. But I think for me, the main takeaways, I just want people to just have a bit more empathy.
It's not just empathy, but it's the empathy for the things that make us different.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So with such a novel out now like this, what's next?
Well, I mean, I'm always writing. So I definitely have, I'm following, like I've got a couple book ideas I'm working on. I've already started writing, kind of really far along. More things that might explain or put some more closure to some of the characters, so
Thank you.
so there's I know. So that's in the works, and of course other ideas, and there's so many interesting characters in the book that I could already take one and create a story around, So I've got stuff in the works, and we've got we just heard from our film agent that we've got a bunch of interest in TV and film. So we're going to be having some meetings and things like that. So, knock on wood, we find the right, keep growing our team for this book.
Yes. I want to switch to our speed round and a little game for you before I let you go. Okay?
Okay.
All
yes.
right. So what is your favorite book?
My favorite. Oh my goodness. I have so many favorite books. Can I just say my favorite book that I just read recently?
Yeah.
I just finished not too long ago, Wahala, which is coming out next year by Akinmade 2022. Oh my God, 2022. It's flying. So that's a great book. But I have so many books I really enjoyed. I mean, picking a favorite is just like, oh my God, I'm on the spot, So
who is your favorite author?
It's a controversial one. But I think it was when I was younger, writing fiction, I connected with D.H. Lawrence's work. And he's a very controversial author back then, because, I mean, he's the one that's behind Lady Chatterley's Lover and lots of those kind of books. But it was more the way he was writing. He had a drama to the way he wrote that kind of I really enjoyed. But I mean, there's so many I love, like Toni Morrison, like I love Chimamanda as well. There's so many people, But yeah. So
what is your favorite song?
My favorite song is Mysterious Ways by U2. That song, when that song comes on, wherever I am, I just like spirits flows through my body, because there's a lyric that said God moves in mysterious ways. She moves in mysterious ways. My full name is Honora Lola Oluwa, which is God moves in mysterious ways. God's ways are wonderful, right? God's ways are mysterious. That's my full name in Yoruba. So when that song, the minute I found that song and I heard it for the first time and I heard that line, just a soul connection. So that is my song, U2's Mysterious Ways.
You are a travel writer, so you've traveled the world. If money were no option, where would you go and what would you do?
If money were no option, I'll just go 2 years to the South Pacific, just island up for 2 years. Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, just everywhere there in the South Pacific, and just live there, enjoy the culture, learn the cultures, different cultures, and just do that for 2 years, just island up in.
What brings you joy?
When my kids say, Mama, when they call me mom, and they just come and say, hey, Mama, and my son, he usually says it in like a little, I call it like a little horror movie kid. Hi, Mommy, but just hearing them say that just brings me joy.
My son does that too. Maybe it's a boy thing.
He might just comes, hi, Mommy. Like, okay.
Being weird. Yeah. And what brings you peace?
In being in any space where I don't have to explain my existence. Right? So it could be with friends, it could be in a situation, it could even be parties, it could be loud, it could be quiet, but as long as I can just be fully without having to explain why I'm there, that brings me peace.
All right. And now I have a little game for you. It's called Rewriting the Classics. What's the one book you wish you would have written?
I would say like Americana, actually. I love the book because I recognize a lot of that experience, right? Where moving from one place to another to go to school and then trying to figure out the cultural nuances and the different cultures and African versus African American. And so that would have been a book where I would have, if I had known, if I had maybe had the idea back then, that would be something a lot of Africans in the diaspora in America could have written their own versions of. Because it's true, when you move, that's something you have to navigate as a new person. And so that's why it resonated with a lot of Africans that moved, to the US to start, because it was, again, trying to understand a new culture and respect it deeply as well, so that if that's a book that I would have, if I had that idea back then, I'm like, yeah.
What's one book where you want to change the ending, and how would you do it?
Book I want to change the ending. I don't know. I mean, there's so many books that I've read recently that have been by amazing authors, but then get to the end and I'm like, no, it cannot end this way, so I don't know. I'm not going to mention any books, I won't want to change anybody's, because the authors have their inspiration, how they wanted their stories to be told. So I won't want to kind of go and change, their own endings. I know people with my own book, they wanted me to have changed my own ending. I'm like, no. So.
All right. So then my last question for Rewriting the Classics, and because you've been so gracious, I'm not sure you're going to answer it, but I'm going to ask, what's one book that you think is overrated and why?
I am not going to say nothing. My mouth is shut on that question.
Okay. So then my final question for you today is, when you are no longer here and among the ancestors, what do you want people to write about the legacy of work and words that you've left behind?
Wow, that's strong. That's powerful. That she tried to bring us closer together to understand each other better. That would be it. That she did everything she could through her words, through her photography, through the work she did, through her purpose, which is fostering cultural connection. She tried as much as she could to bring us closer together so we understand and see ourselves reflected in each other.
Thank you, Lola. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Big thank you to Lola Akinmade Åkerström for being here today on Black and Published. Make sure you check out Lola's novel, In Every Mirror, She's Black, out now from Source Books Landmark. And if you're not following Lola, follow her on the socials. She's at Lola Akinmade on Twitter and Instagram. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Lola about the resource she shared with the world to show her rejections over 10 years and how that toughened her up for the gatekeeping against her novel. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week when our guest will be Adiba Nelson, author of the motherhood memoir, Ain't That a Mother? Until next time, peace.